Hello and welcome to our review of today's newspapers. With me virtually, we've got Sian Griffiths, Education Editor at the Sunday Times newspaper, and Dawn Foster, who's writer and broadcaster. Many thanks to both of you for being with us. And let's run you through the front pages then. The Sunday Express says thousands of British holidaymakers have had their travel plans thrown into chaos after Spain was dropped from the safe countries list. Costa del quarantine, that's according to the Sunday Mirror, as holidaymakers learn they will need to self-isolate for 14 days when they arrive back in the UK. Sunday Telegraph has the same story. Tens of thousands of British tourists in Spain, it says, have had their holidays thrown into disarray with the new quarantine restrictions. And the paper also features a new portrait of the Queen. The Mail on Sunday has the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge refuting claims in a new biography that they actively spurned Meghan Markle. And according to the Observer, Labour will this week be notified of a batch of potentially new legal actions over anti-Semitism days after a warning was issued to the Shadow Cabinet about the devastating toll the crisis is taking on the party's finances. Right, let's begin then. Let's start with the Sunday Telegraph. Dawn, I don't know what summer holidays you've got planned, whether that includes Spain or not. But anyway, this has come as a bit of a bolt from the blue for holidaymakers, the news that they're going to have to quarantine if they've been in Spain.
Yes, it came as a big shock to, I think, everybody. And I think it was very interesting that all nations in the UK, and Ireland as well, joined together so that there was a multi-island response very, very quickly. But it was very, very bad news for Spanish holidaymakers. Somebody I follow on Twitter found out at 8 p.m. and realised there was absolutely no way, even if they kind of caned it down the motorway at 100 miles per hour, that they would get back home by 11 p.m. So it leaves a huge number of people in complete disarray. I think the government, at this point need to do a little bit more to make sure that people have some info. And there are going to be so many people who've booked last-minute cheap trips to Spain after being locked inside for so long. And we've already seen how many people are really struggling to get refunds on holidays that were supposed to happen during lockdown. And what will happen to these people now?
And Sian, this Sunday Telegraph story, it quotes the travel editor of Which, saying, why on earth was this decision not taken 48 hours earlier, before the Friday when thousands of people were flying out for their summer holidays? Could there have been a sort of a bit more of a notice, a bit more of a build-up to this decision where the public were aware at least that it was being considered by the government?
Well, I think that's a fair point to make because, it's the start of the summer holiday. Schools have broken up and a lot of people were flying out on Friday. And so if that decision had been made, 48 hours earlier, a lot of people would not have travelled to Spain and would not now, be facing this possibility of having to quarantine for 14 days when they come back. So I think it's a fair point. Apparently, the decision was taken after a meeting between Michael Gove, the Cabinet Office Minister, Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, and Grant Shapps. And apparently Grant Shapps was dialing in from Spain, which is where he himself is. So he is now facing the possibility of quarantining on his return. So it does seem like pretty chaotic decision-making, really, and very, very unfortunate because an awful lot of people who were thinking they would be able to travel to Spain, who have booked, are now going to be really wondering whether they should aim for refunds, whether they should go, and will their work let them quarantine. And also, it's just a wider disaster, I think, for the whole travel industry, which was really gearing up with these air bridges and these list of safe countries it was okay to travel to, and you wouldn't have to quarantine on your return. So the travel industry was really gearing up for, quite a bit of a surge again in travel, and I think that will be put back by this chaos this weekend.
Yeah, and Dawn, the Sunday Times, they highlight what Sian was just mentioning about the irony, really, that the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps himself is in Spain. Shapps shares the virus pain in Spain is their headline. But interestingly, it also says that Michael Gove, who Sian was mentioning as part of that decision-making process, he was joking that he's on his way to Ibiza soon and he should have possibly fought for an exemption for the Spanish islands, but he decided not to fight for that.
Yes, I think the fact that Grant Shapps is actually in Spain and may have to quarantine may give some reassurance to people who feel as if, the government could have told them earlier, there could have been better info, that this did happen very quickly. I agree with Sean that it happens so fast, and people will feel very, very upset about this. I think there needs to be a balance about whether or not we take these decisions very, very quickly to stop the virus from spreading, or whether we make sure that the public are fully aware that if they do go abroad, there is a chance that, based on the virus rate, based on the changing nature of the news in that country, they may actually be quarantined. I don't particularly think Michael Gove's joke will go down well amongst many people, especially for the many families who really struggled throughout the crisis, struggled financially, will have gotten a very cheap package holiday, and won't have been able to afford to try and get a last-ditch flight out of Spain last night.
Sean, let's go to the Sunday Mirror. Costa del Quarantine. Corona crisis holds shock is their front page. Just on the timing, Jonathan Van Tam, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England, was saying there's no magic time. When you're going to make a decision like this, once you've got the data, you can't try and fit in around people's holiday plans. But this is going to be devastating, isn't it? For the airline industry, once again, for the aviation industry, for the tourist industry, particularly for the Spanish tourist industry. They are so reliant on British tourists in Spain. I think something like 20% of their tourist economy is British holidaymakers.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, there has been talk that Spain may make UK holidaymakers quarantine on arrival, in retaliation almost. At the move that we've just made. So the whole thing is sort of descending into chaos. But actually, just on, for individuals, I would say really do think before you travel abroad this summer. Because my own brother, he was caught in the Philippines, on a Philippine island earlier this year. He went out there for a holiday. All of a sudden, lockdown happened a week later, and he was stuck on an island for about 2 months before he could be flown home. So it can be really serious if you go somewhere and there is a big lockdown and you're stuck. I mean, I think probably for most of the European destinations that's not the case. But if you go somewhere remote, then you could be facing serious problems. I think we should all be staycationing actually this summer. I'm from Wales, and I'm thinking go to Wales. It's got fabulous beaches. Cornwall's got fabulous beaches. Maybe support the UK hospitality industry this year, which has also been very, very badly hit by this.
Okay, you're not working part time for the Welsh Tourist Board, are you, by any chance?
No, but I have been on holiday to Wales a couple of weeks ago, and it was brilliant.
Of course, it's beautiful. Right, let's go, Dawn, to the Observer's front page. They've got a lovely picture of some synchronised swimmers, and of course, talking about easing of the lockdown here in England with pools opening and gyms opening, and it was quite a momentous weekend for many people in the leisure industry here.
Yes, I mean, obviously the leisure industry has suffered tremendously. There's a pool near me that I go to a couple of times a week, and I haven't been able to at all. And it's, devastating to walk past it and think about how many children, were facing a summer without any form of swimming, how many older people rely on it for mobility. So, to slowly but surely get back into these things, to open gyms, to open swimming pools, will be a huge relief to people, not just in terms of their physical health, but majorly their mental health. The mental health of so many people in Britain has really struggled under lockdown. And we know that exercise is one of the best things you can do to actually, lift your mood, to actually make sure that your mental health is a little bit better. So it will be a huge relief for a lot of people, individually, but also for the people who work in pools, who work in gyms, who work, in so many different things, just as the summer is properly beginning.
Sean, let's move away from coronavirus and also on the Observer though, anti-Semitism, Labour warns of cash crisis as cases grow. And it's interesting, isn't it, the whole change of tone now that Keir Starmer's the leader, taking over from Jeremy Corbyn. But what does this mean for the Labour Party and its finances potentially?
Yeah, well, this is a very interesting story. So the headline, anti-Semitism, Labour warns of cash crisis as cases grow. And it's about the fact that a batch of new legal actions over anti-Semitism is likely to be presented to the Labour Party this week. There are 9 cases, apparently, of current and former Labour members who are being represented by a Manchester firm who have lodged cases. And the difficulty for Labour is, to settle it will cost. to fight the claims it will cost. So this is going to be a very expensive, I think, few months for the Labour Party as it pursues this strategy that Keir Starmer put so firmly in place last week, which is a sort of break with the past. And last week the Labour Party did apologise to the BBC journalist John Ware and to former Labour staff members, and they have received substantial damages. So this whole anti-Semitism row within the Labour Party, is going to take some time to resolve and settle, even with this new approach that Keir Starmer is now following.
And briefly, Dawn, on that, do you think that Keir Starmer is going to be, rewarded electorally eventually by this change of stand?
I don't think he will until he actually looks at Labour's complaints process. I think this at the moment is bogging him down, and he can settle out of court with as many people as he likes, but until he actually changes the complaints process and makes sure that people who feel they have been subject to hatred within the party feel that they are properly represented by the party, nothing will actually change for him.
OK, Sian, the Telegraph, Britain building up defences against Chinese space weapons. So much talk of China as the new threat, Huawei, Hong Kong, human rights issues. What do you make of that?
Well, this is a really interesting story, and it's a story based on an article that Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, has written in the Sunday Telegraph today, and he is saying that China and Russia may be developing offensive space weapons. Russia's been accused of testing a weapon-like projectile that could target satellites. Russia's denied this. And Wallace is saying that the Ministry of Defence in the future is going to move away from looking at conventional warfare to look at these sort of new domains of space and cyber and subsea warfare. And there's an interesting quote from somebody called Will Whitehorn, who's the president of UK Space, and he says that if you fire missiles at satellites, it could mean the end of space, because what will happen is that space will get completely full up of these massive kind of pieces of shrapnel, and that will be the end of space. But it's interesting. There's an ongoing review at the moment into the Ministry of Defence and where it should be targeting its resources. So this looks like a sort of whole new arena for warfare, which is probably not a good thing.
Let's go to warfare in the royal family, if you believe this latest book that's being serialised in the Sunday Times, Dawn. William behaved like a snob when Harry fell for Meghan is the headline. And actually, really, this royal story is dominating all the front pages, along with the Spain quarantine story. So what do you make of this book? Have you had a chance to read through some of the claims, Dawn, or are you not really interested?
I haven't had a look yet. I think that essentially, personally, I think that that especially the younger members of the royal family deserve a bit more privacy than they have. I think the fact that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry decided to leave the royal family because they wanted to protect their child, they wanted a bit more privacy, they weren't happy with the way things were going, means that they deserve a bit more privacy. But of course, the public will always want to know, essentially because we pay for the royal family, many people want to know exactly what's happening. They feel as if they are essentially the highest public servants. So, I think the big issue is that none of us really know the veracity of these claims, and people will side with one brother over another. It becomes very much like a classical, classical myth in many ways. So I think a lot of people will read what they want to into it. We'll never really know how much is true, how much is exaggerated, who was wrong, who was right, etc. But you can fully understand why the public are interested, and unfortunately Harry and Meghan don't really want to be a part of that anymore.
Sian, this is your paper, of course, that's got this serialisation of the book, and you're splashing it big time today. Yeah,
well, it is gripping reading. We don't know the veracity of the claims, because the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have said that they haven't given interviews to the authors of the book, and they haven't authorised sources to speak to the authors of the book. Nevertheless, the claims seem, they're backed up by other reporting that has been done, and they are just extraordinary. Apparently, the reason that one of the key reasons that led to Harry and Meghan leaving the country, the royal rift actually began apparently in a heart-to-heart conversation between Harry and William, the two brothers, where William apparently told Harry to take his time over his relationship with Meghan and to take time to get to know Meghan, who he called apparently this girl, and that Harry took offence at this, and that the whole sort of difficulty between the brothers was a kind of key moment. There are other claims in the book that, and some, I think quite serious in a way, that a leading royal member said that described Meghan as a showgirl. I mean, which is, it's offensive. It is snobbish if it is true. So there are, although it seems almost like a soap opera, I think it goes to the heart in a way of our British attitudes about class and about race, and for those reasons, even though the claims seem, as though they could belong in a sort of aristocratic East Enders, the detail of them, I think underlying them are very serious issues and attitudes that we would do well to think about.
Aristocratic EastEnders, I love that. Well, sitting above it all serenely as ever is Her Majesty the Queen, who is pictured in the Sunday Telegraph, a new portrait of her, and apparently she observed that the only thing wrong with it was that the cup of tea next to her needed a refill. That's what she pointed out to the artist. Dawn, do you like that picture?
It's quite interesting. There have been some really, I can't remember the artist, and I won't, shame them on air, but there have been some horrific portraits of the royals in the past. This one seems, quite traditional, but it's very interesting from an artistic point of view. If she seems quite happy with it, apart from the cup of tea, that's a very, very good sign. I can't remember the one. It was one a few years ago that was just like absolutely horrendous. But I haven't been to the National Portrait Gallery for months, understandably. But you wander through, and there are so many different portraits of the royals, especially ones from maybe 500 years ago. And it'll be really interesting to, obviously we won't know, but it will be interesting to think about how people will view these portraits in the future, how they'll look at the story we just discussed, and whether or not they'll have the same opinions on which portraits we think are, very, very talented, really, really capture the heart of different royals and different members of the family, and which ones we actually don't like that much.
Sian, I'm not sure if you're a Fleetwood Mac fan, but Sunday Times, your paper, features quite a lot about Peter Green, one of the original founders of Fleetwood Mac, who's died at the age of 73. And interesting because a lot of Fleetwood Mac fans, I suspect, especially the Rumours era, might not have ever heard of Peter Green, actually, because he was a founder, but then left the band.
Yes, I mean, I'm not a Fleetwood Mac fan, but I did find this piece really, really interesting. I mean, he's known as, a kind of key British blues guitarist. He did found, as you say, Fleetwood Mac, and he's died at the age of 73. And he led that kind of, quite classic rock and roll lifestyle. So it was a lifestyle marred by drugs and unfortunately by mental illness. But they left us those amazing songs. But sadly, he left the band. So,
Dawn, are you a Fleetwood Mac fan?
I am a big Fleetwood Mac fan, and I'm, it's very sad that Peter Green's died. I do actually, I will cause a bit of controversy and say that I prefer Tusk to Rumours, but he was such a fantastic blues guitarist, and I really don't think that the band would have been the band it was unless he had been there at the very beginning, setting the tone for the music, really, really gelling with other members. And he is fantastic. I've seen so many tributes to him, and I think it is exactly as Sian said. It has been a very, very hard life for him, especially with mental illness. But he will be remembered, and his music is just fantastic, both the things he did on his own.
Dawn, thank you very much, and Sian, we're running out of time, but that's it for the papers for this morning.